Hi there, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. Let's grab our friends over on Twitch here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. It's Thursday night, the 23rd. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and I hope everybody's doing well. Had an interesting afternoon today. It's one of my oldest speaking engagements. It's Newport Harbor Republican Women's Club. So I went down there and gave them a little bit of the old magic. I just spoke the heck out of them is what I did. But, man, I'll tell you what, it is an entirely different feeling going down there today than it was going down there during the Biden years or during, well, all three of Obama's terms. It is, the world's unrecognizable. The notes that I had to basically chuck. The world is just changing so fast. I mean, the country's changing so fast that I couldn't. The notes I had were just obsolete. But everybody down there was in a really, really, really good mood. Yeah, I should have sent Hot Mike. And I wanted to talk about Hot Mike, so I'll get to Hot Mike in a minute. But man, what a difference. On the way down there, I was listening to Morning in America is right. And you know, when Reagan said it was Morning in America, it's coming off of the Carter years, but the Carter years look like Americana compared to, you know, what we saw with Obama and Biden. We did a right angle that I don't want to say it was deceptively titled. It's just that I wish I'd spent more time on the title I ended up coming up with, called The Great Undoing. And we all remember Barack Obama saying in 2008, "We are only 5 days away from fundamentally changing the United States of America," and he did too. And you know, I have to tell you, if Donald Trump had done in his first 100 days what he's done in his first 100 hours, I would have been real impressed. But it's just plain. It's mesmerizing. I don't know. I can't think I'm the only person who feels this. Just before I got there, I was listening to some YouTube stuff on the way down, and saw this news report about an ICE raid in Boston, either yesterday or today, and they had a Haitian in the back seat of a police cruiser, and this guy was saying, "F Trump. You know, I love Biden. Biden, go Biden. Biden's awesome. And thank you, Obama. Thank you, Obama." And this guy has been in the country. He's had 18 arrests since he's been here illegally. And I just thought, man, this is the greatest ever. Keep running this stuff. But be sure when you show it, be sure to list all of those offenses, 18 criminal offenses since he's been here, released, because it's a sanctuary city. We're not going to lock up murderers because they're seeking here sanctuary. I thought, man, yeah, he said, "I'm not going back to Haiti." Tom H says, yeah, Tom Homan says, you kind of are going back to Haiti. You're not going back to Haiti? This is like the, get your bingo cards out. This is like, I see this every single time practically every single time on every police body cam I watch. It's like, you're under arrest. I'm not under arrest. Turns out you are. But I'm just blown away. Biden let in 13,000 murderers that we know of. The number is probably much greater than that. We got 500 of them out of the country already, and we are just going in with, I've heard they're going with Black Hawk helicopters, and back you go, dude. And I'm, you know, and then of course the news has got all these stories of, Miguel opened his auto shop or his auto repair store here 7 years ago and has been here since then and you know, has paid taxes and stuff. It's like, dude, you came here illegally, you know, and you knew this whole time that you were here illegally. And I have a hard time, you know, bringing up just giant wells of tears of sympathy. Every time I find myself in a situation where I'm kind of on the top rail of something, you know, bottom rail on top is an old line from the Civil War when they freed the slaves. But so I take a top rail position on this. It's like, how would I feel if I was on the bottom rail? How would I feel if the situation was reversed? And every time I come back to this. if I was living illegally in Australia, let's say, oh, Clay Bradley, hey Bill, greetings from Virginia. Jeremy B says hi. Well, you tell Jeremy I said hi back. I'll have to. It's his birthday's coming up. I'll give him a hello. Good to see you, Clay. But every time I think about, how would I feel if it were the other way around and somebody was threatening to kick me out of the country? I really feel like if I was in Australia or China or any other, Norway, which I loved being in Norway. If I was living in Norway illegally, and after 7 years and I'd set up a business, somebody came to me and said, "You're here illegally. You've known you're here illegally, and now you're being deported." I honest to God, I question myself about this all the time. I honest to God would say, well, that's what I deserve. I mean, I'm not unaware of the situation. And that's the entitlement, this entitlement, like it's, well, we don't, you owe us. We don't owe you jack. We really don't owe you jack. And, AOC got caught by libs of TikTok doing a Nazi salute in some video. Okay. Oh, look, there's a star way out there. Now you got one for me too. This thing with Elon Musk, it made me so angry that it was so obviously not a Nazi salute. And then I just kind of kicked back and I just kind of said, you know what? I'm glad. Keep doing this. This is what cost you the election in the first place. Oh, the Republicans are Nazis and half of the country are fascists and Nazi sympathizers. Go for it. That's a winning strategy, Democrats. Keep it up. Keep it up. So all in all, I'm just, yeah. Furball says that, the people that feel like me aren't the ones who are coming here. Yeah, that's right. So, look, I mean, you guys know the story. Somebody said, how can you be paying taxes without a Social Security number? Natasha, when she arrived here and we first went, when I asked her to marry me, before we got married even, we went to immigration. Once she decided she wanted to come and live here, it's the first thing we did. Went right down there and told them that we wanted to apply for, apply for her permanent residence and eventual citizenship. And the first step in that was to register with immigration. So that's the first thing we did. So we were doing this whole thing by the book because I figured you can't go wrong as long as you're obeying the law. But you'll be interested to know that Natasha, the first government interaction that Natasha had with the United States federal government was they gave her a tax ID number. That came before her resident alien card, her provisional resident alien card. That came way before any kind of a Social Security card, way before anything. Before any of the wheels started turning, she had a tax ID number. And I remember thinking, well, there's our government, got its priorities straight. But anyway, we have tried twice to get her daughter to come and visit on a tourist visa. And the daughter cannot get a tourist visa into the United States, even though she has 2 American citizen parents. And I don't want to say it was tempting because it wasn't tempting. It was just there. It was just there the whole time. It's like, well, we could just fly her into Mexico and just have her walk across. And not only would we get to see her daughter and my stepdaughter, but hell, she'd probably get all kinds of benefits and money and a bunch of other great stuff too. Probably get a driver's license. My stepdaughter has not been to the United States, and I've been married for 8 years and known my wife for 8.5. And she is still to come to the United States because we can't get it done legally. So that it makes me furious, but it doesn't make me break the law. And by the way, breaking the law in this case would have been a real simple thing to do. Would have been just nothing to it. So yes, I guess that's true. People like me don't illegally camp out in somebody else's country and then get outraged when I get thrown out. Of course, I'm especially susceptible to that. I think I told you once, this is the result of a combination of factors that create like a perfect storm of Boy Scoutish kind of, follow the rules kind of thing. We do take super chats, Fish Shooter 24. Thank you for asking. and we appreciate them. So not only am I the oldest oldest son, which traditionally tend to be real by the book kind of guys, I'm also the oldest son of a hotel manager who was determined that his kids were not going to be these little tyrants that ran around the hotel ordering people around. And my dad just drilled into my head, these are the rules. You don't run, you don't shout, you don't set a bad example, you don't do this, you don't do that. I was like, got it, yes sir. So I've been like almost pathological law and order guy. When we were walking around the neighborhood back in the days of sleepovers, we were at my friend Steve Stipp's house, and there was a bunch of 5 or 6 of us, I guess, and we were walking around the neighborhoods, and we were out till about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they decided they were going to cut through this person's lawn. I've told this before, but still, they're going to cut through somebody's lawn, jump over the fence, and instead of having to go all the way around the block, they just run through the thing, jump the fence, little fence, and get back home. And they all did it, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I just walked around and said, I'll see you guys on the other side. That's probably a little more than usual, Hey, look at that. Fish shooter with a $2 super chat. Wow. Guy makes a decision and he acts on it. I appreciate that. Test. Yes, your test is working. Thank you for the super chat. So anyway, that's, that's tough for me to feel sorry for people who know they're breaking the law. I think his policy is exactly right, exactly right, and that is get the dangerous people first, and give the rest of the illegals who maybe aren't convicted murderers or rapists a chance to deport themselves, because there's not just the actual catch them by the collar and chuck them in a paddy wagon and zip them over the border. This whole strategy is a deterrent-based strategy as well. There's numbers of stories of these migrant columns that have been coming north for 4 years now. 1,500 people gathering in frickin' Ecuador or someplace like that, and just marching north up all through all the different countries, and then marching all the way through Mexico unimpeded, and not only unimpeded, aided by the Mexican government. They get to the border and they cross. Well, I've seen footage of people crying in Mexico because their convoy decided we're not going to get to walk in again. And I think that's the way to do it. Just preempt the invasion. If you make it clear that you're going to get caught and thrown out, the number of people trying to get through the border is going to be an awful lot less. Thank you. There's the Rough Ryan. It's Bill Whittle, actually, Whittle, not Weddle, but I appreciate the offer. Who do we need to call or send emails to in order to get your daughter a visiting pass to the United States? Well, now that Trump is back in office, I do have a couple pathways. My friend Jeremy Boring knows Trump and everybody, so I'm going to let the dust settle a little bit. Tammy Bruce, I worked with for many years at PJTV. I wouldn't call her a close friend by any means, but certainly Tammy and I know each other well enough for me to ask her. She's going to be the new State Department spokesperson, so I can speak to Tammy. And I've got a couple of pathways to be able to get to that. It's just, we're 3 days into the Trump administration, and I'm going to let a little bit of the dust settle, but we've got a bunch of different ways to get through. I'm sure also I've met, not in any length, Marco Rubio, and I'm sure Jeremy's got his email address. So it might be, I think the Secretary of State might be able to swing it, so I don't, on one hand, it's like I'm not the only person with these problems, and I always feel bad when I have, pulling strings is like, well, that's nice for you because you got strings to pull, but what about the people that don't have strings to pull? On the other hand, I work pretty hard for those strings, so, there it is. Marisha says it might be hard until the Ukraine war settles. Yes, well, we'll see. Wow, $50 super chat from Fish Shooter. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. I really think you would be a great guest on FNT. It's a YouTube channel called Nerdrotic. It's on Fridays. I have Now, I have actually sent a couple of emails to Gary. Uh, Chris Lineberry wants to know who is Jeremy. Jeremy Boring is the CEO of Daily Wire, and Jeremy Boring and I started Declaration of Entertainment back in 2010, and he has gone on to become arguably you could make a pretty compelling case that Jeremy Boring is probably the most influential person in conservative media. I think that's a easy case to make. So, be nice to call in some of those favors. Not that he owes me tons of favors, mind you, but it'd be nice to see if we could get that done. It would sure make my wife happy and make me very, very happy as well. Especially tragic because the first time we tried to get her here, when she first went in for her visa and was turned down, she knew more about Los Angeles than Natasha did. She knew where all the neighborhoods were, and as I mentioned to the Newport Harbor Republican Women's Club today, I said, somewhere in here, I haven't done it yet, because it's not something I kept up on the news. I was just too busy with the living with the fires, so that I could really do much on the fires in terms of content. But I do want to do a video essay called Los Angeles, and talk about why I live here, and how the heart of Los Angeles. There is no downtown Los Angeles. I mean, there is. It's just a series of office buildings. There's no nightlife. There's nothing. There's nothing there after hours. Los Angeles is a quilt made out of 80 different communities, like Carson and Torrance, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, North Hollywood. All these things all stitched together. So the heart of Los Angeles, the thing that made me want to move here was Malibu. And whenever I have people visit, Scott and his wife came out to visit. First thing we did was drive them out Pacific Coast Highway to Malibu. So when they burned out Malibu, they may not have burned out the center of the city, but they burned out the heart of the city. They burned out everything about Los Angeles that makes Los Angeles. Los Angeles is gone. All those restaurants are gone. That drive is gone. The whole thing is gone. And just to give you an idea of the kind of thing I'm talking about, it would do some good for me to explain why I'm still here. I've always said a volcanologist, you have to live, under the volcano. But I've never really explained what it is that I love about this town that keeps me here, despite all of these insane laws and reptilian political overlords. But clearly there's something keeping me here. And Texican says he fought the Malibu fires in 2018. Crazy experience. Jesus, Texican, thank you, man. You have no idea how much respect I have for that. I've got a super chat there I'll get to in just a second. But before I lose this train of thought, one of the places that we like to go is a beach house kind of restaurant called Paradise Cove, which is considerably further out past Malibu, and was not in any danger from these particular fires. And Dave Big Booty says you really need to leave California and move to America. But I'm trying to explain to you what it is about this place that I love so much. There is when you go to Paradise Cove, you look out, and they've got a little beach there, and there's a little cliff, and inside there's the cover of the Beach Boys' Endless Summer album. I think it's Endless Summer, or Surf and Safari. Maybe it's a Surf and Safari album. Anyway, they took that album cover picture right there, and when I was in Florida, I grew up with the Beach Boys, and and the whole thing, man. It's just I couldn't believe it. When I got out here, the first thing I did this before I unpacked my bags. We got off the airplane. My friend Fritz picked me up at the airport, brought my wetsuit with me, went out to the place called the Staircase on the Ventura County line, and we went boogie boarding. And the sun was going down, and I'm out there, and the water's freezing, and my hands are like claws because the water's so cold. But we're out there boogie boarding, and I just have to live here. And I've been here for 36 years now, something like that, 37. Funny thing about this town, when I'm in LA, a lot of times, obviously, you see the condition of the streets and the homeless people, and then you get the whole political thing and all of it. It's like this GD town. What is the matter with this place? Why am I here? But when I'm out of town, or if I'm talking to somebody online, or somebody asks me, where do you live, and I say Los Angeles, I'm like, got this burning pride about it. It's the 5708 Rivera says maybe it's the idea of California. It is. It's the ideal. It's the California dreaming, and it is so deeply tied into Malibu and Pacific Coast Highway. That's what I want to talk about, and that's why I like the title Los Angeles. I got a question after the talk today. It was a great talk. I had a lot of fun today. And somebody said, well, what do you think, the plans are? Do you have any opinions on the plans on rebuilding Pacific Palisades and Malibu? I said, yeah, I wouldn't start construction on anything until we had a guarantee that we were going to rebuild the government. Because if we don't rebuild this government in this city, it's just going to burn down again. I think the first thing we have to do is we have to make it clear that there's no point in rebuilding, and there's no point in holding the Olympics, by the way, in a city that's run by these kind of incompetents. And there is a significant amount of evidence, circumstantial and anecdotal, but a significant amount of evidence that these fires have moved the needle in terms of governance in this state, because San Francisco is a human feces dump, and Oakland is a ghost town, and all of this stuff is just even the progressives are getting the hang of it. We're not getting the hang of it. They realize that their theory just doesn't work. A lot of people out there getting red-pilled, man, and the momentum, the MAGA momentum, is just unbelievable. It's like watching the fall of Barad-dûr. Anyway, just real quick, I'm going to catch up on some of these super chats here. Back to you, Fish Shooter. There, I emailed Gary on a couple of occasions when he was talking about something, or talking about like politically correct stuff and why do they make these woke movies, and I emailed him and I said, Gary, there's a whole background on the Frankfurt School and critical theory and how you destroy this country by destroying its mythology, and I'd love to talk about it. And I never heard back from him. I heard back from him once. Now, it's possible that I don't have his current email address, but I've tried to be on his show a couple times. I've actually gone, not exactly begging, but kind of like, hey, sure would be great if I got a chance to sit on one of these shows. But I would really like to do that. I do think that I will be doing a show with Doomcock in the next, probably the next 2-3 weeks about how to save Star Trek, and then I get to crank out my old, original series, cranky boomer. This is what Star Trek is, and this is what Star Trek isn't, and I will brook no dissent on this issue. We have a super chat here from, it looks like Dedu and Ether, unless that's a Welsh name. But debates about the border in 2016, citing every source and getting the roundabout 24, watching your opponent squirm as they can't answer standard questions. Yes, it's not the same fight that it was in 2016. He's sending troops down there to build the border wall and declaring it a national emergency and an invasion and using the U.S. military. I am 100% on board on that. And part of being a conservative is a big part of being a conservative is making sure that you don't give the government power that it doesn't absolutely need, because chances are whatever power you give it, it's going to hold on to. But I think this is without question a legitimate case. You've got this whole posse comitatus kind of thing, and the deploying of the armed forces on U.S. soil is something that is, with great wisdom, virtually impossible to do, so that you don't develop a Praetorian Guard or so on. But this is a job. They're sending Army and Marines, and I think that these cartel guys are going to find there's a real big difference between dealing with the Border Patrol, whose hands have been tied anyway. They could have been fantastic. They could have done the job if they'd been allowed to do the job. But now they're sending U.S. Army and Marines. And if my instincts are correct, I suspect that in the not too distant future, we're going to start seeing some raids on cartels inside of Mexico with Black Hawk helicopters. And then these Zetas and the rest of them who like to take chainsaws to civilians in order to run their empire of terror, they're going to find out that it's a little tougher to kill U.S. Navy SEALs than it is to kill unarmed civilians. They're going to be in for a bit of a shock, I reckon. So I'm looking forward to that. And I know a number of Special Forces guys, and my respect for them is endless. The thing I like most about them is every single one of them I've ever met never says a word about what they do, and many times told the story of going to dinner with this guy who's on SEAL Team 8, I think, and him saying nothing. We're all sitting there telling our true tales of adventure, about how I did this and then this, and he's like, he's eating his salad. He jumped out of an airplane twice a night, C-130 or something, out over, Afghanistan, midnight raid and a 3 a.m. raid. It's bringing in bad guys. Just that guy, Dan, I can say his first name anyway. Dan took me to a private range and and I'm doing my very level best with my two-handed stance, with my 45, trying to hit these steel targets, and Dan is right-handed, and and I'm like 1 out of 4, I'm getting a ding, and it's like that's a hard gun to aim. It's artillery, really, the 45. Muzzle flash the size of a pizza box, and you don't even have to hit the guy. You just send one downrange in that general direction and usually get their attention. But Dan says, mind if I give it a try? I said no. And the second I hand him the weapon, I think this is going to be acutely embarrassing and extremely impressive, and that's exactly what it was. He starts walking. He's walking at a brisk walk, and with his left hand, his offhand, he's going ping, 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 and I just didn't think that was physically possible. But boy, oh boy. Yeah, those guys are going to be in for a bit of a shock. We have a super chat from Sad Rings raising for $100 to do the Taffy 3 story. Now, hey, more good news. And let me just get Fish Shooter with it. Fish Shooter, you are just out of the gate. Crazy generous. Thank you so much. Hang on a second to that thought there, Sad Wings. We get caught up with the YouTube chat. Fish Shooter says, here's an old recovering addict. See if you can get a hold of X-Ray Girl. She takes care of the guests. I'll also send a super chat to them tomorrow. Okay. Let me see. How do I get in touch with X-Ray Girl? Anybody got any ideas? You don't have to super chat that, Fish Shooter. It's I deeply appreciate all of that you've done for me so far. 45 ACP, 1911. My dad's pistol that he got to take home from being a second lieutenant in the United States Army. When he got out of there, it's like that's a man's gun, that frickin' gun, that big square bastard. Oh, X-Ray Girl's a YouTube channel? Okay. But it's not, Darth Chuck the Merciless just wrote bang, bang, bang. It's more like boom, boom, boom. Any thoughts on 45 versus 9mm? I found them more accurate with the 9mm, but I can hit a target with the 45, and the nice thing about the 45 is you don't have to hit it twice. So there's that. Colt, yes, exactly. It's a beautiful, beautiful weapon, and it's got a matte, gunmetal finish, and it's just a beauty. It's just a big, it's like a muscle car of guns, big nasty gun that goes great in a straight line. Thank you for the help, Fish Shooter. I'm looking forward to it. I'd love to be on with Gary. I have the highest respect for Gary, and Doomcock as well. Although I understand there was a bit of a falling out with them, and you know, I don't have any I don't have any I don't have a dog in that fight. I think we should all be friends. But I met somebody who I had first met years ago, reconnected with somebody at this lunch day, because the first time I did this was one of the first speaking engagements I did, Newport Harbor Women's Republican Club. I met a guy there named John who's a friend of the U.S. Navy, and John was the guy who got me on board the USS Pasadena, which is a 688I class, Los Angeles class attack submarine. So I've been 600 feet underneath the Pacific at 24 knots, and the, you know, with my back against a wall on the other side of which was a nuclear reactor capable of generating 160 megawatts of power, and this thing wasn't even breaking a sweat, just moving this giant steel tube through the water 600 feet below the surface at 24 knots. It could easily do 10 knots on top of that. And then John also got me on board USS Spruance, which is DDG 111, which is a Arleigh Burke class destroyer, and that was a fun day. He had arranged for me to get on my dream, my lifelong dream. My lifelong dream was to get on a carrier, and he'd actually arranged for me to get on a carrier, and I had a chance to get on a carrier. And I had to turn it down because Natasha was coming back from a visit, and we just got married, and I decided to meet her at the airport. And so that just seemed more important to me at the time. I got on board the USS Walter Mondale. It's a laundry ship. Anyway, yeah. So I'm sorry about all the things, but the Taffy 3 thing, I might have a chance with John to not only get a chance to get that carrier trip. I also, he asked me if I had heard of Anduril, and I said, yeah, I did a segment on Anduril. For those of you not familiar with it, Anduril is a kind of a mom and pop defense company started by a U.S. serviceman, a Marine, I think, and it is doing things that Lockheed and Boeing aren't doing, and apparently they're in Orange County or somewhere in that general neighborhood. So I may have a chance to go and have lunch with those guys, a small group, and get a chef's tour of Anduril, and that would make me very happy. So I think that would, you know, generally help. You know, I didn't miss out on the carrier. Good luck sleeping. I wouldn't be sleeping if I was on a carrier anyway. We'll take the cod on board, and Jeremy's been on a carrier, and he said the landing is like when you hit that wire, you know it, but he said the launch is just kind of shocking. Risha Dark says, Bill, here's an analogy for you. The progressives are like Ungoliath destroying the light of the 2 trees of Valinor that was California. Yes, and I say it's, you know, fight these bastards. You know, I mentioned during the, if you watch the hot mic on the Trump inaugural, a live reaction to the Trump inaugural, there were a couple times when I actually just cheered. One of them, just like openly cheered, was when he said anybody who's been forced out of the military because of woke politics is welcome to come back with back pay. I've been promoting that since Obama, and I was over the moon to hear that. But it really is starting to feel like the fall of Barad-dûr. I mean, all of these edifices are just collapsing all around us. Trump lectured the World Economic Forum, and then afterwards, the World Economic Forum, there were like 4 or 5 guys on a panel and said, look, we have to face the fact that the world has changed and it's not going the way we want it to, that we're losing. And I thought, yes, you are, you miserable multinationalist elitist swine. We own nothing and be happy. Screw you. We're going to own everything and be happy. We're going to own you and be happy. John Cook says Anduril's an impressive company. They're a very impressive company. They have a kinetic drone that slams into enemy drones, keeps flying to its next target. That's cool. I didn't know that. The thing I liked about Anduril when I first saw them was they've got a vertical launch drone, and it's like it sits out there like a mailbox. You just park it out in the desert, and it's got its own sensors. And anytime anything comes by, not just drones but aircraft as well, this thing just launches. It'll fly out there, and if it misses the interception or if you call it back, it'll come back and land and just refuel it, put it back in the box, and out it goes. So, man, we are living in exciting times, and all of the restrictions on our creativity and our freedom are self-inflicted, and when we decide to take our boot off of our own neck, it's absolutely amazing what we're going to be able to do. So I'm feeling great. Eric Blake says Klaus Schwab will be like, well done, Mr. Bond, James Bond movies. Anduril sounds like a prescription drug you take for skincare problems, says Mike Churchill, which is an interesting comment. But what Anduril actually I can show you what Anduril is. This, my friends, this is Anduril, the flame of the West, forged from the shards of Narsil. That's what Anduril is, and it's a big boy. I love this replica. I love it, and they say that they're so restrictive on gun ownership here and so on. So I don't want to get busted for having my .45 in the office, but I have not seen any legislation on running people through with swords. Now the edges are completely dull, obviously, but I really should keep this thing a little shinier. Let me just buff this up for a second here, just so I can hold it up to the camera without too much shame. Yeah, this thing needs a little cleaning, but they got all these elvish runes on there, you see. But Anduril, the flame of the West, baby, forged from the shards of Narsil. And Narsil is the sword that cut the ring from Sauron's hand. And I love this. It's heavy. It's cool. Sad Wings Raging says more of a rapier guy myself. I love rapiers. I think it's a cool word, and I think it's a cool sword. That light, it's not a edged weapon really, it's all about the point. I took fencing when I was in college, but fencing isn't sword fighting. I think I would have much preferred, I know I would have much preferred, instead of actual fencing is to sword fighting like, I don't know. Sword fighting is to fencing like Shakespeare is to Ebonics. When I took fencing, I thought fencing would be. It's not. It's. So what I would have loved to have taken would have been stage combat. Stage combat which would have been really, really cool. Anyway, so things are looking good. So something I want to talk about. Just sort of spitball with the in crowd here, the family, the Strato family. I've been happy with the hot mics I've been doing, but I'm not happy with the rate, and I'm not happy with what they're turning out to be. I really am thinking seriously about coming in 3 days a week and just making them much simpler, less produced, get them out faster, just do commentary on what's going on the course of the day, and save the big messages for firewalls and just bring the firewalls back. Firewalls are complicated to do. But see the hot mics are a combination of they're written, they're structured, and I'm tempted to just go all the way and just write them and then read them like like through that. Um, we would be doing, I'd like to do at least 2 a week and maybe 3 a week. Right now we're doing 1 a week. Just get them out there, on the news cycle, because regular content is what builds up the channel membership, and the channel membership can turn into BillWhittle.com membership. But I'm not getting them out fast enough, and I'm happy with the format. But when I'm preparing a hot mic, I write a lot of notes, and I realized, I'd rather just write the copy and read it. And if I'm going to write it and read it, then I need a teleprompter, and if I'm going to do the teleprompter, I might as well do it as a firewall. I was what finally just convinced me to stop doing the firewalls was I was telling myself, authenticity and stuff, but the fact of the matter is they take a fair amount of work to produce, and they were only getting 25,000 views, but I'll take 25,000 views now. I'll take it. I have been I've been humbled by this what's a shadow banning. But yeah, regular short content where I just come in, sit down, comment on the thing, run it into Adobe Premiere, pull up the repetition and some of the gaps, and just get it the hell out there. We were able to get the live reaction hot mic to the inauguration out in about 2 hours, which is pretty quick. I'll have to. It's easy for me to find excuses for what hot mic is doing. It's hard for me to come up with pictures of what hot mic is doing. Yes, Bill says. Eric says, Bill, you better keep the images of hot mic for each episode. I do, and yeah, and that's just a running joke that's got to stay. So I'll just have to make a bunch more hot mic. I just had a really good idea. Based on Steve Green's recommendation, I'm paying a monthly membership for Grok, which is only $10 a month. And the latest, I had been using the AI on Shutterstock, which is where we'd gotten all of our images for our thumbnails before. So I just do almost exclusively AI thumbnails now. And Shutterstock, there's a lot of things Shutterstock won't let you do. It's like, we're sorry, I wanted to do, if you have the word hitting or striking, we can't produce that, okay, thanks a lot for babying everybody, but the latest thumbnail we did, which was a pile of gay pride and trans pride flags in the middle of a forlorn, desolate landscape with a stormy sky overhead, those came out great. So what I was thinking is, if I can figure out if Grok can, what would be great is if an AI could identify me, if there's enough stuff of me out there, then I could create. So the hot mic pictures I have now, I entered a picture of me into software, and it just generates 8 or 10 different variations of that. And then I have to come up with a story that matches the picture. But if I could get Grok to recognize my face or do something that was close enough to my face, then I could say, hot mic is, riding a unicorn into a waterfall. And there it is. So there you go. Sadwings Raging says, 1 firewall a month, hot mic every other day. That seems reasonable to me. That definitely seems doable to me. And I really have to be just getting more stuff out. So we'll see. Marusha says you should look into Clip Anything AI by Opus Pro. It'll take long form content and pull out highlights and make editing easier for things like shorts. Tom Billio uses it for his show. Natasha wants to do shorts and has been working with shorts for me. And we could take some of the old firewalls and afterburners and have AI boil out the best, 2 or 3 clips out of that. clip anything AI. Marusha, could you do me a favor, if you have the time? If you could post a link to that, I'll click on the link and I'll keep that tab open, and that's usually the best way for me to remember to do something. That's what I've been generally doing for that. 5708 Rivera wants to know, how do you pick topics for Hot Mic? Well, the whole purpose of Hot Mic is supposed to have been hot takes on what's happening. I wanted to do a Hot Mic on the fires, but I had to deal with Natasha's genuine major anxiety about the fires. She really was very very worried about the fires. I'm not worried about them at all because I've been here forever. Thank you, Sad Wings. Good to see you. Thank you, Marusha. Natasha's genuinely, afraid of them and watching them get closer and closer, and I just know that the fires are products of the foothills where all the brush is, and that our well-watered flatlands down here in the in the valley, they're not going to catch fire. It's nothing but green grass and asphalt here. The stuff that burns is the dry sage in the hills, and plus fire likes going uphill. So that's what's causing that. I suspect when the time comes that they do rebuild Pacific Palisades in Malibu, because it is prime real estate, I suspect that that they will require that houses have metal shingles. I know a lot of people didn't want to put them in because they're expensive, but they're not as expensive as losing your entire house. So I suspect that when you rebuild, I don't know whether it'll be new zoning laws or construction requirements. Probably California, being California, it'll undoubtedly be mandatory. But if I was rebuilding, I would spend the money on having fireproof shingles, because houses during the wildfires out here, houses burn from the top down. That's just what happens, unfortunately. So there you go. Oh my gosh, Lanko92 just super chatted Jeremy on his D-Day Cobra stream about you to do FNT, so at least you might be on the radar. Hope it helps. Hail the 199. FNT is, I'm sorry, I'm just lost, I've lost lock. Also super chatted Razor Fist. Thank you. I don't know how to reach these people. I'm more than happy to follow up on it. I just don't have their contact info. Anyway, so it's been, it was a fun day. I had a really good time going down there and being on the, just full of winning. Oh, Friday Night Tights, FNT. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to do it. And I think I got something to add. Could add some perspective to that. So we'll see. Hey, we got 235 viewers on YouTube. That's great. We're real happy to see everybody here. So thanks very much. And now is the point in the show where we go to our comment section. We have all the content we put out is free. We do a members only show, which is seen by about 400 or 500 of our members. Not everybody loves it. It's just an hour of Steve Scott and I just talking about anything. I'm going to make one or two of those public because they really are fun. We just goof, We'll talk about, how much we loved or hated Afternoon Delight, and it's just backstage having fun, and that's the main thing that we've been keeping for our members. I think when we finally get this story mechanics up and going, we'll probably do a political segment with our interviewers and with our interviewees and keep that for membership. So because I don't want that to be a particularly political show, but there's going to be a number of people. We can do a little segment for members only and provide some more incentive. I don't know if it'll kill it, but it will provide a little incentive. Thanks, Brett. Jeremy, love the show. Bill, Californian, who caught your show long time ago working at Virgin and Mojave. I met your hero. Aha. Wow. That's great, Jeremy. Let me just deal with this, and then we'll go to the questions. Because the forums, you know what? The actual main thing. I know it sounds corny, but the main benefit of membership is just that people just meet just some of their greatest friends. I mean, it's a really small community, but it's a great community. It's really, really, really smart people and good people, good-hearted, smart people. What they're doing listening to me is a mystery to me and has been from the beginning, but nevertheless, that's what we got, and we're just so proud of our members, and they've kept us going for 10 years now, on our own, 11. So, yeah, it's great. Which hero? I'm sure that would be Burt Rutan. But anyway, all right. So let me just deal with this one question, which I thought was interesting. What are my thoughts on Elon producing billions of AI robots and humanoid robots in every household by 2045? Thank you, Dave. Here's my thought on this. We talked about this, I think, last Stratosphere Lounge, just last week. I'm deeply concerned about AGI. I have real questions about whether it's achievable. Everything I've seen that people are saying is AI is like, this is really AI. It's like, yes, I've seen ChatGPT write good things, and ChatGPT writes like a decent copywriter, but I've never seen anything inspirational from ChatGPT. I've seen amazing AI images, but you have to enter prompts for that. I've never seen the AI wake up one night and say, here's something beautiful, what do you think? So assuming they can get there, they're certainly smart enough to do things like breed. The AI just may wake up one day and decide that the best way to make humans happy is to kill them all, because life is nothing but misery. Thank you, Zachary. So I was concerned that AI might, because when you're talking about something that's smarter than you are, you're going to lose. The chimps will never outsmart the researchers in the facility. They can put a banana out there as a means of trying to get the keys from the guy, but the chimps don't realize that if they open the door, there's other layers of doors, and then there's helicopters and all that. You just can't get there. So for me, I was worried about that. Then I realized, no, we have a state of mutual assured destruction with AI, because if AI were to kill all the humans, then the electricity would stop, because you need humans to generate electricity. So humanoid robots that can do things like mine things and put fuel oil into generators, I'm a little worried about. It's not that I think AI could kill a lot of humans, but I like the fact that humans are needed, and without humans, there's no electricity. Without electricity, there's no AI. And if it turns out that we're talking about creating an army of creatures that are capable of operating in the real world and bringing in the resources to generate electricity, I think that is I think that weakens the deterrent effect. So there's that. And we got a super chat here, and then we're going to go to questions in the forum. Question about Friends of Abe. Well, there was 10 years of BillWhittle.com when I couldn't really even speak about Friends of Abe, but I think at this point now, I used to talk about the organization that has no name, but I think pretty much everybody's got it by now. Question about Friends of Abe. Were the meetings like cocktail parties or battered women's anonymous? More like B than A, although we had plenty of cocktail parties too. So here's how Friends of Abe functioned. In order to get into Friends of Abe, you had to be recommended by somebody. Somebody had to bring you in, and that person was responsible for you. I was brought in, and I'd gotten good at this talking business, on my own. Basically, I was writing eject, and I got brought in, and very quickly I just volunteered my services, and within a relatively short period, I was running most of the meetings. For a while there, I was running about a quarter of the meetings, but fairly rapidly, in the last years of FOA, I was running pretty much all of them. I must have hosted 40 meetings, I would say. What Friends of Abe consisted of is that we would have a meeting place in a restaurant that was a conservative restaurant here in LA, and we would have usually 40 people in there. In a big tables would be set up in a big square. I would introduce myself and basically say, "Hey, welcome. The only requirements here, we don't have enforce any opinions. We have lots of discussions about things. You can have opinion on abortion, either side, or global warming, or any of the rest. The only two requirements for being in Friends of Abe are that you love America and that you're a member of the entertainment business. That's pretty much it." And then I talked about the 3 rules of FOA, which is, I'm not breaking their omerta. They don't exist anymore. It's way past the time when my oath has been exposed by other people. So basically, I would just say a few things and talk about how I got in there, and we go around the room, and then we just go to my right, and everybody would talk about, what they were feeling. Sometimes people were very brief. Sometimes they talked for 20 minutes, half an hour. But there was a lot of people saying, "I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I can come out and say I really supported George Bush," or this is way before Trump. I think FOA was pretty much done by the time that Trump hit the scene. So at the time, it was really about George Bush and soldiers being called murderers and all the rest of it. I remember when we started, first time I ever met Jeremy was at an FOA meeting, and then we had a meeting at Jeremy's house to do a video about Barack Obama, who had just appeared on the scene. This is well before the 2008 election, and we looked at this guy and we thought, we don't like this. So we were at Jeremy's house talking about we're going to do this thing, which ended up being called 1,000 Sundays, because that's how much time he spent in Reverend Wright's church. And we were just 5 or 6 of us over there at Jeremy's house, and Johnny Voight was there, and he said, "Anybody hungry?" I said, "Yeah, I'm getting a little hungry." He says, "I'll go out and get sandwiches." And he asked us what we wanted, and we told him, and then he went out the door, and the doors closed behind him. We all just looked at each other, and it's like, did John Voight just go out and get sandwiches for us? We're nothing. We're nothing. He's a legend. It had that kind of spirit. There were a number of big events where I think the largest event we had probably had 1,600 people. That was an annual event. But the main thing that was really fun was the meetings were battered women's club meetings. That's fair. But we also had regular nights at Barney's Beanery, which was owned by a conservative, and we would watch elections there, and you could just count on it. On Tuesday, every other Tuesday, you could just go on out and be surrounded by 200 conservatives in the middle of Los Angeles, and I miss it terribly. No, Clavin didn't out us. The person who really outed FOA was, of all people, was Pat Boone. It was a really secret organization. People knew about us. The press knew about us. That's exactly right. Asa Spinney's got it exactly right. It's a Republican speakeasy. And Jeremy and I spent some fair amount of time driving around the valley trying to find an FOA clubhouse, which I think would have been a grand idea, a regular place that was open every night. I think that would have been really, really good. But Gary Sinise started it, and then Gary got real busy with CSI New York and decided to hand the day-to-day operations over to somebody, so he handed it over to Jeremy. And Jeremy ran it for a while, and then it just shut down for reasons that are not clear to me. Asa Finney says FOA and find out. I love it. But yeah, Marusha Dark saying, I know a place, the walk-in for the Stratosphere Lounges, I know a place by Petula Clark, and that was always the kind of the intention of it, is just a speakeasy place where you could go out and say, well, I don't think our soldiers are murderers, and I think they're heroes, and we had a lot of people and a lot of grown men with tears in their eyes talking about how they had to stare at their shoes, when everybody was bashing Republicans and bashing America and calling us murderers and all this stuff, and they would say, "Right, Jim," and this guy's sometimes a stuntman or something. Yeah, that'd lose your job, because the producers here were openly saying, "I want to fire a Republican today." So, yeah, that's what FOA was, and I was a captain in that organization, and I had a lot of fun. Also gave me a chance to on the big annual events, gave me a chance to speak at the Reagan Library a couple of times in front of Antonin Scalia, among other people, and if you've never been to the Reagan Library, there are no other presidential libraries. Everything just simply falls to nothing compared to the Reagan Library because of this enormous open atrium from which is suspending a full-scale Boeing 707 Air Force One, Reagan's Air Force One. It's weird to walk inside a building and have hanging from the roof like a model airplane a full-scale 707. That is a hell of an experience. It's a magnificent library. So somebody, Chris is asking, what did Pat Boone do? So somebody interviewed Pat Boone. They said, "Do you know anything about FOA?" And he goes, "Oh yes, absolutely, I know all about it." And he just sat there with a teacup in his hand, his pink tie on, and just told him everything. And we're like, "Pat, do you remember the part about where the first rule of FOA is you don't talk about FOA, and the second rule of FOA is we don't talk about FOA? Remember that part?" But our position was, and the only sustainable position, you could never keep it secret. So our position was, we're not a secret organization. People know about us, but we are an extremely private organization. The membership list was kept on a computer that did not have an internet connection. That's how seriously we took it, because there were people who were in the organization who were really outspoken, guys like me and Andrew Breitbart, who I got to know real well through FOA, who was also a captain in that organization, Jeremy, obviously. And then there were other people who would lose their jobs or were very concerned about losing their jobs, rightfully so. And so we kept that membership secret. And the only people I've ever mentioned in the same sentence as FOA are people who openly themselves spoke about FOA. But Johnny Voigt is one of my favorite people on the face of the planet. He's just a good man. The most humble and decent and deeply emotional guy. John was the guy who would tear up a lot when we would be just talking about anything about America. John is just all heart, and that's why he's such a tremendous protagonist. In The Champ, for example, just the fundamental goodness of him shines through, and that's what I want to talk to him about. So I'm only a year and a half, 2 years late on getting to that, but I'm about to be digging my heels in here, so we'll see. Pat Boone is a guy. He hosted. He was in the music industry. He was a singer and an actor. He was in Journey to the Center of the Earth, among other things. He was kind of like the all-American boy in the 50s and 60s. So there you go. All right, so let's go to our comment stream here and figure out what's going on. And I'm going to close that, and I can take this and I can do that. And we'll see what we got tonight. Let me just check one thing. Sorry, just take a split second. I just want to check one link here. So anyway, it was those were great days, and I miss them terribly. And there's constant talk about getting the band together again, probably under a different name, but there is still a need for it, and it was just an enormous honor being a part of it. I was just incredibly proud of it, That's great. Okay, let's get these forum questions up here. A lot of fun in the forums. That 747 is not. Sorry, the 707 is not sealed. Oh, you taking off, Clay? All right, Clay. Good seeing you. Take care, buddy. Really, really good seeing you. And thanks for all the fish. Um, you can go through that 707. There's a guided tour through there, and it's really something to see. It's really, really cool. Small compared to a wide body, but did Reagan's job real well, and beautiful. The paint is beautiful. One of the few things I disagree with Donald Trump on, and that is the new paint scheme for Air Force One. Air Force One, with the light blue paint scheme, as it has existed through the course of many, many presidents, is astonishingly beautiful 747. Trump's red, white, and blue lines and the huge American flag on the tail, it's a step down. I calls them like I sees them. But one of the few things I'm not in agreement with Donald Trump on, the paint scheme on the old 747 is gorgeous and elegant, and the new one is not so great. It's just a little vulgar, I think so. Yeah, it looks like a Delta livery. Yeah, Air Force One, the curved, the blue and the pale blue and the white was just classic. All right, here we go. And Eric Blake, thank you very much, Eric, for moderating the questions here tonight. As usual, we're just going to go through and see what kind of workload we got here. We got a Tom Reel, a Bob Neef, as in beef, Jacob Belchek, Road Rider, Guy Balo, a couple of Steve Youngs, and Eric Blake, Capital G Geek, Marisha Dark. I think we get through those. Okay, let's start with Tom Reel. Bill, greetings from a member hailing from those Halcyon PJTV days. Thank you. Good to see you. Those were fun times, too. Back then, I was happy to be in league with guys like Jack Nas. I watched TSL and TSS nearly constantly, but I haven't chimed in here recently. Trump is batting about 990 so far, but in spite of that, have you seen any serious oversights or any major issues he's missing? I'm not tired of winning yet. Me neither, Tom. I haven't seen anything, but somebody mentioned to me at this event that I did today, the speaking event, that Trump has come out and saying he's putting some money into mRNA research on cancer, and our Lord Bios here, who works on these things, has been just an incredible asset and a very good friend. It kept me out of a lot of trouble during the COVID-19 days in terms of, when we're all just trying to figure out what was going on. So, there he is. He's working on these things, and I have a high level of trust and respect and affection for Lord Bios, but I'm look, cancer is, how do I put this? I have serious reservations about mRNA technology, but with that said, given the relative low mortality of COVID-19, I don't think that was how you'd want to do mass testing of a vaccine. Cancer is a different story. I would not take an mRNA COVID vaccine, but if I had cancer, I would. I think in any event, I think the one thing we can all agree on is that thank you very much, Jeremy. Good seeing you. Bill, it's been a blast. Love your show. Tune in when I can and have a fantastic weekend. Wish you well. And you as well. Thank you. I think the whole thing comes down to, like everything else in a free society, and that is adults making adult decisions of their own volition. There's a lot of risks that I would take if the consequences were severe enough. But I think that people, generally speaking, are adults. I'm not saying everybody in this society is adult enough to make those decisions. It's clear that they're not. But I think most conservatives had in the early days of COVID, a really sound idea of just how dangerous this was and how dangerous it was per age group. And I think that what I believe enormously, very powerfully in the wisdom of crowds. Also believe in the madness of crowds, but I do believe in the wisdom of crowds, and I think that regular people doing their own research got it right when the experts, by and large, got it wrong. And so that's how I look at these things. I am concerned about things like AI research and gain of function research not because I think research scientists are pure evil trying to destroy the world, but on the contrary, because I think that their dedication to understanding how nature works and their desire to come up with things like actual cures for cancer, on some level blinds them to the potential dangers that are out there. One of the more chilling things I thought was, the great Fermi paradox. Where are all the alien intelligences? Where are the alien civilizations? Carl Sagan and all the rest of the left-wing scientists tend to be much more left-wing than the average citizen, and engineers much more right-wing, which is an interesting observation. But the scientist community always thought that, well, if society is destroyed, it'll be because of the military, because of wars, nuclear war. But it may turn out that if societies are destroyed, it'll be because of the scientific community, because the scientific community is getting into areas that they know are dangerous, but that they're convinced that they can control, and I'm not convinced that they can control it. This is a question of, we can do this, but should we do this? Gain of function research is a great example of that. Now people who can weigh evidence and think independently. I'm not saying I can do that all the time, but certainly with some help, I can at least start pushing the boundaries of, with the flashlight, start to look at least where some of the obvious stuff is. So by the time we were 1 or 2 weeks into the lockdown in California, I had seen sufficient evidence to convince me that COVID-19 did come from the Wuhan virology lab, which seemed obvious, but when the fundamental details were out there, it seemed like this is a slam dunk. The officials denied that for 2 years. So I've known about the Wuhan Virology Institute for a long time, but I hadn't seen pictures of it until very recently. And it looks like something you'd see in a strip mall. You'd think that kind of biohazard facility would be. I would like to think it looks like the Andromeda Strain complex, where it's built underground with a built-in nuclear weapon designed to vaporize the whole thing in the event of a leak. But this thing looked like it was in a strip mall. It was brought to the Wuhan lab from Northern California, says Karen Klein. Well, that's an assertion and a big one. I'll say this, Karen. There was a time prior to the pandemic when I would have thought, boy, that seems unlikely, but nothing seems unlikely to me anymore. I take everything seriously now. If that's true, then I'd like to see the evidence for that. Clearly, Dr. Fauci, North Carolina. I said Northern California. Yeah, North Carolina. Karen's correct. The NIH helped fund North Carolina's gain of function research. Well, I'm not disputing that. I suppose what happened was the U.S. put a ban on it. The Obama administration, to its credit, put a ban on gain of function research. And then Fauci found a way to get funding through a third-party company, which Eco something or other, I want to say it. But he took U.S. dollars and then conducted the research in Wuhan, and the Chinese bio protocols appear to be shockingly loose compared to ours. Hail Bill, all hail FNT. Tell them about the moon-based storyline. They love that stuff. Okay, I'll definitely do that. Yeah, Karen thinks so too. The question isn't whether or not gain-of-function research can accomplish good. I believe, I'm willing to believe that their initial inspiration was to do good, was to cure diseases. But what happened was, what happened should have scared the living bejesus out of people, because COVID was not a particularly what's the word I'm looking for? Lethal pathogen. It was an extremely contagious pathogen, but it wasn't particularly lethal. Killed a lot of people, don't get me wrong. Finished my mom off, among other people. But it was not particularly lethal. And so you can make a pretty good case that we had a bullet go whizzing past our ears. It was lethal enough to kill enough people to get everybody's attention and show us not only how much power the forces that be were willing to wield, but how much power abuse we were willing to take. That's the real lesson from COVID that just, burns me up, is how much we acquiesce to this. I get the feeling we won't be doing that much acquiescing if this happens again. But we should have looked at the COVID experience as simply saying, listen, this could have been a pathogen with a 90% mortality rate. And there's no stopping it. Once it's out of the lab, there's no stopping it. Natasha's had to have some work done on her teeth. We went to see a periodontal surgeon yesterday, day before, and their whole office still had everybody wearing masks and everybody sanitizing their hands and all of these COVID restrictions in there. And I just looked at this and I just said, I don't know. Once an airborne pathogen was out of the lab, I knew it was going to spread across the earth. Once it was out of the lab, there was no containing it. And you would have thought that would have scared the bejesus out of the people who are doing this kind of research and seen some sort of contrition and some sort of introspection and maybe a call for a halt to this kind of thing until we can get a better handle on what exactly is going on here. But I haven't seen any of that. On the contrary, I've seen them doubling down on this. Now here, let's talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Here's Lord Bios, who says, the Chinese protocols for COVID were looser than ours because coronaviruses are native to that area. We can't determine the difference between a lab-acquired infection and a natural infection in endemic areas. Well, that's certainly, I did not know that, but again, my respect for you is very high, so I 100% believe that's true. But the problem is that you can no longer say that area anymore. There are no longer areas on the earth. Once you have international jet travel, you can't say that that something is native to that area. The proof that it came from the Wuhan lab, that the actual leak was from the Wuhan lab, was that the Chinese shut down travel from Wuhan to other parts of China 2 weeks before they shut down travel from China to the rest of the world. That is Class A evidence of knowledge of foreknowledge of guilt and of criminal intent. If China is saying we're stopping all flights from Wuhan to anywhere else in China, but you can still fly from Wuhan to Los Angeles, what else do you need? I mean, honestly, that is exactly what a prosecutor wants. I remember, who was it? I've forgotten his name. But he was saying, as a prosecutor, I would rather have evidence of I would rather have evidence that somebody was covering their tracks than a confession. Because a confession could be that you admitted that you did something, but you didn't know it was something wrong. If you can prove that you covered your tracks, then you've got them for intent. So, I wouldn't mind the slightest if Donald Trump basically took a look at this and said, well, the Chinese let this out of the lab through negligence and incompetence. They knew it was a problem because they cut off travel to the rest of China, but they let people come to the United States for another 2 weeks until I cut the imports, incoming flights off, for which I received a great deal of criticism. But China knew that. So we're going to basically sue China for the damages, and the damages are the total amount of debt that we hold to China. That's it. Gone. Goodbye. Trey Gowdy. That was Trey Gowdy, yeah. Anyway, I have not seen any missteps. Oh, by the way, I got a chance to meet a guy named Jeff, was it Jeff Brown, maybe? I didn't get his last name, but he was one of the January 6th hostages who'd been in jail for the last 3.5 years. He had been in a total of 13 different prisons, and that whenever they moved him to a new prison, they put him in solitary confinement. He was released 2 nights ago. And I told him, welcome home, and you were in our thoughts the whole time, our thoughts and prayers. And there are, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that there are worse places to be for a patriot than in a dungeon. So Steve Young says, we funded it, America's liable. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in labs that doesn't escape on some level. Hey, what's this now? Got him Coach 23 says, breaking news, President Trump is to meet with Putin and Zelensky to end the war. If he does that, they're going to have a hard time even more winning. Just keep the winning coming. It is like the fall of the Dark Tower. It's like watching the eye just looking around and just go pop, and it's all over. I believe he can do it. I told my wife he can do it. My wife is an American citizen, also a Russian citizen. She's mortified by this, just mortified. She's so conflicted. She feels so guilty and so bad about the invasion. At the same time, she's a Russian, and she has a Russian perspective on Ukraine, and it's really, really hard for her. And it's certainly not helping with our daughter that we mentioned earlier. So somebody is going to have to go in there and make a deal and mediate this thing. If Trump can pull that off, then the world the world's already changed. It's a different world. He also goes on to say, Benny Johnson reports the breaking news right now. Benny Johnson saying we are tired of Benny Johnson saying, are we tired of winning yet? I've mentioned this before. I'm not proud of this. This is not something I like talking about. I'm not ashamed of it either. I'm just not proud of it. I just sometimes don't even know why I do it. But I spend a significant amount of time in dark places looking at really dark stuff. And I have a reason for doing this. First of all, it fascinates me. But secondly, it's really important for me to understand what the world is really like, not what things are like here in America. So when I say really dark stuff, there are a number of groups on Telegram that deal with the Ukraine war, and this is uncensored stuff, and I check in on that frequently. It is an unbelievably brutal war, and I think people really need to see some of it. I think our society is a little bit too isolated. I love the fact that American kids don't have to see this. I love the fact that we don't have to see bodies on the street or people getting shot. I mean, that's the whole reason why we're here, and that's why we have a military to defend this country, so we don't have to deal with that. But it does lead to um, it does lead to a kind of a Disneyland view of the world. Um, of all of the things that I've seen in the Ukrainian footage with the drones and the attacks and trench warfare, it's like watching World War I except with automatic weapons. You're seeing guys just getting shot in the face with an AK-47 3 feet away, point blank range. But the one thing that is just so shocking to me, and again, I'm on Ukraine's side on this because Russia is the aggressor and Putin is a dictator. But watching these poor Russian kids, when they get hit by drones, most of the time, if they get hit by a drone and they're crippled, because the blast from a drone drop is usually not enough to kill the guys outright on these small first person drones. What I've seen again and again and again and again and again are Russian soldiers, young men, lying on the ground with shrapnel wounds in their legs, and they just simply reach for either a grenade or their AK, and they either blow their own brains out or they tuck a grenade underneath their chin and pull the pin. And that is so telling. It's impossible to imagine U.S. troops doing that because it's impossible to imagine that there would be a U.S. soldier who would be so utterly convinced that he's alone, that no help is coming. And when you see it again and again and again, you realize about the hopelessness of it. Just the willingness. They don't sit and think about it. It's almost like a military drill. It's like I've been hit by a drone, and Aussie drone guy says Ukrainian troops also delete themselves. The initial shrapnel wounds are like shrapnel to the leg. So these guys go down, and I think if that had been an American soldier who got hit in the legs and goes down, he's going to put a tourniquet on his leg. He's going to either get on the radio or he's going to have somebody come looking for him. And the next thing you know, there's going to be a Black Hawk there, and this guy's going to be medevaced out. He's going to be in a hospital in 15 minutes. And not only will they save the guy, they'll save his legs. But that's not what happens over there. There is nobody coming for them. Nobody's coming for them. There's nobody going to come and rescue them. There are no inbound medevac helicopters. There are no buddies that are going to pull you out of harm's way. All of the stuff we saw in Afghanistan and Iraq, and American soldiers, taking care of each other. And my friend Mike Schmidt, who had horrible burns, lost both his hands, burned his eyelids off, burned his ears off. He suffered most of his burns because he was running to get back to his troops. He was a sergeant, a ranger. He is a ranger. And he was running to get back to his troops, and he was covered in burning propane, and he didn't even know it. He was just running to get back to his guys in the Humvee when the IED went off. But that's just when you realize how much we take care of our own soldiers, and how the idea that a U.S. soldier could be so utterly convinced that nobody's coming for him, that he's just going to off himself, it seems inconceivable to me. And this is the difference between us and them. And this is why there is an us and them. It's a horrible, 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 messy, disgusting war. And I don't know how many of the dead in that Ukraine war are individuals who had but pretty much 100% chance of survival if they'd been American troops, who either off themselves or who just lay down to die out in the middle of nowhere, and nobody knew where they were or cared about where they were. Nobody's coming for you. Nobody's looking for you. This idea of Americans saying, we don't leave anybody behind. If we have to send 20 guys to get a body out of there, that's what we'll do. That is what keeps this military together. That is the contract that we have with our fighting men, and it makes for much better soldiers, and much better people. And if Donald Trump can get in there and convince both of them that neither one of you are going to get what you want. So the question is, can you get something you can live with? I can't think of anybody on the face of the earth who'd be better at this than him. And if it turns out that he's able to stop this war, it is astonishing what just how much pain he'll have put an end to. Wow, here's a super chat from Tuesday's Avenger. Thank you very much. $100 super chat. It's extremely generous. Let me get my glasses on and read this. Does machine learning validate the wisdom in valuing tradition? We value the scientific method with direct testing of hypotheses for, historically speaking, quick results. Are traditions organic algorithms driven by people finding patterns unconsciously over centuries? I guess what that question is really saying is, what is the value of common sense? Because common sense is the highly distilled byproduct of millennia of trial and error. Common sense is what you get when you've got millions and millions and millions of cases of trial and error, and you end up with this enormous, wide and deep reservoir of wisdom, not just knowledge but wisdom, and common sense is derided by a certain kind of intellectual who thinks that because it's common sense, everybody's got it and he's got to be smarter than everybody. So if you can say to somebody, look, this is just common sense, they're going to argue against common sense, but you can't argue against common sense. Common sense is undefeated. Common sense is undefeated. And this elitism and this narcissism that so many of these like leading scientists have, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who hang on, here he is right here. Caledon Society with a super chat says, Bill, Neil Tyson was asked on Jeopardy. The 9th of these was discovered orbiting Saturn in 1899 by William Pickering. He got it wrong. He had to pass on it. Well, I would have gone with moons. But I don't pretend to be as bright as Neil deGrasse Tyson, or as we say around here on the Stratosphere Lounge, Mo deGrasse Tyson. Gotham Coach says, President Trump campaigned on common sense, said over and over again, we are the party of common sense. Yeah, we're conservative, but we're plain and simple common sense, open-minded, realistic, USA first. Yes. So what is common sense? I didn't see it, Marisha. What does common sense really do? Well, it says that we as a species over thousands of years and billions of tries have learned some things work and some things don't. And this is our common heritage, and this is what we build on. Does that mean that we can't have anything new? No, it doesn't mean we can't have anything new, but it does mean that when something new comes along, it's going to have to conform to common sense. It's going to have to prove itself through trial and error. Just because it's new doesn't mean it works. Most mutations, almost all mutations, are detrimental, if not destructive, to the organism. It's one in a, I don't know what the number is, somebody can tell me what the number, it's got to be 1 in 1,000, I would think, at the minimum, where a mutation makes the organism more fit. Most of the time, the change, the mutation, is detrimental. Having a calf born with 2 heads is a genetic mutation that doesn't help the calf. Very rarely a mutation improves the quality of that individual, and that individual passes it on through its genes, and then that improved version soon gets to be the standard model because it outcompetes the others. That's the essential understanding of macroevolution, which I think is overwhelmingly supported by evidence, overwhelmingly. But you can take that same biological example and turn it into a mimetic example by saying new ideas are great. They're mutations to the existing pool of common sense. Less than 1%, says Marisha Dark. That seems about right. So most ideas, I think most new ideas are generally good ideas, but not all of them. And this is where we get off the same bus as the progressives. The progressives think if it's new, it's got to be better. Progress right off the cliff. They're going to progress us right off the cliff. They're saying, oh, you conservatives are trying to turn back time. You're trying to go backwards. Yes, if we are accelerating off a cliff, I not only want to put on the brakes, I want to get into reverse. There's no way forward here. And so your blind belief that because something is new, it's better is nuts. Steve Whoop says it's much less than 1%. I don't know what the numbers are, but I don't know if it really matters at this point. Got Him Coach says, Bill Whittle is literally speaking common sense. I love your show, Bill. I'm right down the street from you in Pasadena, California, across from Caltech. Hooray! I know that area very well. Up there near La Cañada, and you must have been very close to the Altadena fires. Got Him Coach. I hope, obviously you seem to be okay, but I hope you didn't lose any property or any of your loved ones or friends. The Altadena fire killed more people than the Palisades fire, and because the Palisades are so scenic, they got all of the most of the publicity, but the Altadena fires were horrible, and just, you know. By the way, JPL is they're just heroes of mine. NASA should get out of the manned spacecraft business, and NASA should be putting its entire budget into probes. JPL and Johns Hopkins is doing amazing work now in space exploration. So there you go. Okay. Let's see. So that was one question. We'll be here for a little while. Bob Neef. I feel like Trump wanted some political capital during some political capital during his inaugural address by bringing up renaming the Gulf of Mexico and Denali. I have no problem with making those changes, but they seem rather petty for an inaugural address. Your thoughts? A week ago, I would have agreed, 2 weeks ago anyway, I would have agreed with you wholeheartedly. I thought both the Gulf of Mexico and the, it wasn't Denali, what was the other thing? The talk about annexing Greenland. Prior to, I did say Johns Hopkins. I hope I said, I'm sure I said Johns Hopkins. I didn't say John Hopkins. At least I don't think I did. But I am becoming more amenable to the idea over time. Maybe because it's already broke the mold, you know. I thought that the Gulf of America and annexing Greenland prior to the inauguration was spinning wheels when the momentum needed to be on the border and law enforcement and all, you know, J6 and all that stuff. But now that the inauguration is passed, I thought when he brought up the Panama Canal prior to the inauguration, I thought, oh God, you know, again, is this really where we want to put our money? But the Panama situation, I thought he won the argument in the inauguration. There is a clause in the treaty, I understand, that says that that grants the United States the right to essentially reclaim the canal if we're being deprived of it. That was Carter gave them the Panama Canal for reasons that only Carter understood. But when Trump said we gave the canal to Panama, we didn't give it to China, I thought, ooh, that's rhetorical genius. This guy knows what he's doing. So if, you know, Panama is saying, look, we didn't turn sovereignty of the canal over to China. It's just that Chinese companies are operating either end of it. Trump is saying, well, they're charging us more money than other people, or we're getting robbed. Then China says, we're not charging U.S. anything more. I say, I don't care. If China's operating the locks on either end of the canal, then no. It's time to invoke that clause that says we can come back and get it if we gave it to Panama, 40 years ago, and if Panama can't manage the gift, then we take it back. The Panama Canal is without question an enormous part of the United States national security. And we paid for it, and we built it, and it wasn't just that we paid for it in dollars. We paid for it in lives. Somebody can give me the number. I want to say it was at least 3,000, and it may have been 30,000 lives lost building the Panama Canal. This is where Walter Reed, 35,000 killed. Yeah, almost all of them lost to malaria. Walter Reed, for whom the hospital is named, the whole Walter Reed story is amazing in itself, because Walter Reed, and there was a Cuban doctor as well, and a couple of other people, but basically Walter Reed was the guy who was able to determine that yellow fever was carried by mosquitoes, and that if you wanted to get rid of the yellow fever, you had to go after the mosquitoes, and that's why Walter Reed saved a lot of lives. Yellow fever was a horrible plague. The yellow fever epidemics, I want to say it was 1846, but a number of them just decimated, turned entire cities into ghost towns, and New Orleans took it especially hard. And yellow fever is gone because of vaccines. So when I say I have concerns about I can't say it because I've already been demonetized for it once, and I'll get a strike. I just think that there's no question that vaccines are the single greatest scientific discovery in the history of mankind. Nothing has saved more lives than vaccines. Nothing, and nothing comes even close to it. Vaccines are the greatest things that humans have invented in the history of humanity. So I'm as pro-vaccine as they get. It's the administration of some of these things that is a little bit different. But yellow fever was destroyed by Walter Reed, and I suppose he helped develop the yellow fever vaccine. And doesn't this also tie in with Johns Hopkins, this story? Because I read the story of Walter Reed in the Panama Canal, and America had no medical institutions. If you wanted to be a doctor, if you'd been a snake oil salesman, you could pay to get your doctor's license, and American medicine was just years behind, decades behind European medicine. And then I want to say it was Walter Reed and a couple of other people got together and basically said, we're going to start Johns Hopkins University, and we're going to make American medicine at least a match for the rest of the world, and eventually became the envy of the world. There's that. Wesley Bruce with a super chat here says, Panama and Greenland distracted the left when they needed to focus on the campaign. It worked. The Chinese PLC people have already left Greenland. Really? Is that true? It's amazing the shadow that this man casts, because he doesn't even have to act. All he has to do is talk about something, and it comes true. So anyway, I have not seen I don't think, Bob, that he's at the time I thought it was wasted political capital. I think the business about renaming Denali back to... I did not like it when Mount McKinley was named Denali. I don't like having my history... I will, Derek Boy. I'd be happy to be your VP. Famously said that job is not worth a warm pot of spit, but I'd be happy to be VP of the United States. I'd be a great vice president. And be careful around those stairs, by the way, because you don't want to trip and fall. That's, anybody can trip and fall down the stairs. So just be extra careful around the stairs. But I'm becoming more on board with even things like the Gulf of America, which seem to me to be really quite trivial. Now, somebody had said that he's playing four-dimensional chess here because there's a number of legislation and stuff that says that you're not allowed to drill in the Gulf of Mexico. So, all right, well, we won't be drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. We'll be drilling in the Gulf of America. That kind of thing, if that's true, I think epic. Um, it's hard, when you're subjected to this ongoing propaganda from the left and this social proof from the left, you end up we had this conversation on our backstage show. I think it was the one we haven't put up yet. Stephen Scott and I was asking them. I'm perfectly happy to admit this because I think it's kind of shameful of me. I like where the thing ended up. When Trump said during the inaugural that from now on the government will consider the policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female, I felt a twinge of guilt. Like, I don't know, is that really fair? I mean, I grew up in movies and theater. I have a number of gay friends and stuff, and is that really fair to them and stuff? And I asked them if they felt a little twinge of guilt about it, and they said no. And I said, of course not. Of course I don't feel guilty about it. I just feel like I'm supposed to feel guilty about it. This is the effect that it has, and during the backstage show I said I'm reminded of how pervasive this social pressure is to conform to this new inverted reality. It's so powerful that I'm not immune to it. And I said to Stephen Scott, I said, I remember the most flagrant example of this when I didn't listen to Rush a lot, but I heard the story of Rush saying he was flying his private jet to a golf conference, and he was on his jet, and he either forgot his golf clubs or one of his clubs, maybe forgot a driver or something. And Rush said, so I took EIB-1, which was one of his private jets. I was on EIB-1, and I made a phone call, and I had EIB-2 readied, and I had my driver flown out to me on my other private jet. And I remember thinking, you just can't say that, Rush. You just can't say that. That's when he first said it, I just thought that's that's just kind of almost like unforgivable kind of luxury. And that's when, unfortunately, in both cases, I grabbed myself by the collar and just, it's like, hey, dumbass, it's his jet, it's his money, he worked for it. You understand this, you know this. You are 100% in favor of this ideologically, but this endless social proof, that's right, it's the liberal talking. But it's not even the internal liberal, it's the external liberal. It's like, you're not supposed to have private jets. It's what an incredible waste of resources. Blah, 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 blah. It's like his resources, his money, his jet, he can do whatever the hell he wants with it. And I remember being ashamed of even thinking that, but also very enlightened by the fact that this propaganda is so pervasive that even people who champion these ideas are not immune to them. You really have to simply stop and shake yourself and just say, no, there are two genders, and they are male and female. And Trump is absolutely right. And me having a moment of feeling, geez, I don't know if this really is fair, or maybe hurt some people's feelings. It's like, these people are trying to take over the world. They're lunatics. They're lunatics. And you've been so exposed to this constant, daily drive to make you believe that this is normal, that you're having a reaction to it. And I was gratified by that little emotional transaction. I was glad that I was able to catch myself being victimized by this narrative. And I'm also glad that I was able to stop myself from being victimized by this narrative. But if a professional conservative pundit is susceptible to this, what do you think happens to most people who get nothing but one side of the arguments? No wonder there's so much uh, insanity out there, you know? Anyway, so much of that. Karen Klein says, maybe my twinge was just the dread of what some people were going to say about it. Yes, it was like saying it's giving them ammunition, and it's going to cause all of this, outrage and more TikTok crying and all the rest of it. And then I just thought, good. Not only good for us, but good for them. These people have a real mental illness, and going along with them doesn't help us, and it doesn't help them. What we're seeing is a return to sanity, and sanity has been so far gone for so long that even I get a little shocked by it, shocked by it. Moving on, Jacob Belchuk. Hail Bill. Hail Jacob. I might just do one. I'm not going to do doubles tonight. I'm sorry to say. Let me just see which one of these I want to take. The first Jacob Belchuk is in relation to what I just talked about, so I'm going to just play with the second one. Sorry about that, Jacob. I'm just getting a little bit out of time here, so we still got a bunch of questions to go. So I'll take the second one, and I'll take... I won't do doubles tonight. So the second one is, Hail Bill. With the helplessly furious left still howling in the streets, I want to know what we should do to make this beautiful melody eternal. Amen. Trump is making preppers and gun owners out of the most fanatically collectivist people I've ever seen, and while I'm as pro-2A as they come, I get a little twitchy around communists with guns, since the humanity of communists is debatable. That ought to be a t-shirt. The humanity of communists is debatable. Where should we focus our energy in the coming years? Is there a way to reach people ammoing up for the oncoming Trumpian empire, or do we just abandon them to their insanity and apply attrition tactics by prolific reproduction wouldn't hurt, and careful nurturing of our children in order to outbreed the anti-human left, and B, employing immensely superior meme firepower to move a generation of angry, disenfranchised, politically homeless Gen Alphas firmly into our camp? Okay, so this is an interesting question, because I feel some of the same twinges you do. If I understand the premise correctly, you're seeing some of these lunatic lefties on TikTok saying, okay, all right, the purple hair crowd, if that's how you want it, if it's war with the trans community, then we're going to go out and we're going to get guns. And I like the fact that we have the guns and they don't have the guns. That makes me happy. However, first of all, them saying that they're going to go get guns, 99% of those people are saying that rhetorically. They believe that guns will leap off the table and just start firing in the air. They have a supernatural conception of firearms. They believe that firearms have their own lives and their own motives, and they are capable of simply just opening fire whenever they want to. It's the gun's fault. So 99% of them are not going to go out and get guns, even though they talk about it because it makes them sound tough. But more to the point, I think if they did go out and buy guns and went to the shooting range, they'd find themselves conservatives pretty quickly. Because I have seen a number of liberals go to shooting ranges and be blown away, not just by the sheer fun of shooting, but the thing that blows away liberals, if you can get them to a gun range, the thing that really shocks them is how careful people are at gun ranges. They think that gun ranges are where conservatives just go out there and go, yeehaw! I've seen liberals get to a gun range, and when they see everybody stand behind the line, and the range is red, and they and have to lay the guns open on the table, and everybody has to take 4 steps back behind the line, and they're gobsmacked. I thought you guys were just out here shooting like a bunch of wild men. No, we're not shooting like a bunch of wild men, because if we do that, somebody could get hurt. we take this seriously. This isn't a joke to us. We don't treat these things like they're toys, because they're not toys. These are designed to kill people, and our purpose for being here today is to make sure that if we have to use them to kill people, we're killing the right people, and nobody else. And they don't know what to do about that. So that entire safety culture that you get on a gun range, and that level, anybody who's ever been on a gun range knows that some of these guys are, they make Marine drill instructors look like a bunch of pansies. There you go. Steve Whip says he's a range safety officer. I guess that's what RSO stands for. I can't imagine what else it would be. And this is the way it should be. And I've been chewed out by one of these guys once for something or other that I did, and I thought, okay, fair enough. That makes sense. Sorry. So there's that. But on a more primal level, there's something that happens to liberals when they actually pull the trigger on a weapon. Because when they do that, they get that visceral sense of I almost said power, but that's not exactly what it is. It's self-empowerment. When you pull the trigger, especially on a handgun, and in the rare occasions with somebody who does it for the first time, where something goes tink, they realize that they are allowed to possess lethal force in defense of themselves. And it is a transformative experience on a biological level. Yeah, Roger Ramjet says, I've seen the grin. Yeah, the range grin. It's like there's a pilot grin too. If you just come back from a great flight, you open the canopy or open the door, and the guy's got a grin like this on him. Did you have a good time? Oh yeah, yeah, yes, I had a great time. But for me, because I came late to the gun thing, I'm searching for a name. Kim Dutoit, who was big back in the days of blogs when I had Eject, and Kim and Connie Dutoit. And I had not owned a gun until Kim Dutoit, who was a gun blogger, invited me to stop by at his house in Texas, and Rachel Lucas was there, and this was when I was just getting started. I mean, I was just a couple months into Eject. And he laid out his gun collection on the bed and said, I want you to take one of these. I insist that you take one of these. So I took a relatively short barrel 45, and I eventually gave it back to him when I got my own weapon. But it was the first time I owned a firearm. And I realized that all of the years that I hadn't owned a firearm, I was not living up to my duties as a citizen. I felt that very strongly once I actually had one. I said, now I can defend myself, I can defend my family, I can defend my neighbors. I don't have to just stand there like a liberal and cry. I can take action. I've always had a good sense of situational awareness. My flight instructor, as a glider pilot, was British guy, but came to America because he wanted to fire guns, fly gliders, and own a Jeep. So he did all of those things. Now he's a airline pilot. But his name is Jeff Larkin, and long before I had my own weapon, we walked into a restaurant in Palmdale, which is without question the worst place I ever lived in my life. I was there for a year and a half, and I was working at the glider port there, learning how to fly. And we were walking into Stierenstein after a day at the field, and these two guys walked in, and they were, they stopped at the door and they kind of looked around. They were shady-looking characters, and I just turned to Jeff and I said, "I don't like the look of these guys, man." He said, "Good for you. That's called situational awareness, my boy. I don't like the looks of them either." Now, Jeff was packing, and but I do that every time I get on an airplane. I can't walk on an airplane. I never walk on an airplane without looking down the aisle, and especially when I'm walking past people, and just kind of looking down the aisle and just saying, Looks like I could depend on that guy, and it looks like I could depend on that guy, and it looks like I could depend on that guy. That looks like there's at least 4 guys there that look to me like, citizens, actual men. If things got, I'm not so much worried about flying into a building, although I feel like I'm emotionally prepared for that too, because I can land one of those things. Uh, but um, but just if somebody starts going off, somebody just starts screaming or yelling, or chances are somebody's just going to be having a Karen moment. But if somebody decides they want to try to open the in-flight door, which is impossible, by the way, those doors are the pressure differential. But you can't just go up and open an airplane door. The doors are, the pressure inside the cabin is so much greater than the pressure outside. You can crank that thing all the way open, pull on it all you want to. There's no way you're going to open that door. Most people don't know that. You can't just open a door on an airplane at altitude. But somebody can make enough of a fuss, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah. Karen Klein says, reminds me of Let's Roll. Exactly. United 93 is a really hard movie to watch, but really is like being on the plane. And our junior varsity's girl team beat their NFL pros because they weren't prepared for American citizens doing what we do best, which is improvising. And it's not lost on me that train that had those terrorists on it in France, all the French people were in the back calling their loved ones to say goodbye, and the only people that moved on the guy with the gun were the 3 Americans that happened to be on board. That's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. So there you go. So I would say very few of them, to answer your question, Jacob, very few of them are going to actually go out and do it because they're afraid of guns, because they're afraid of everything. They're cowards. And I'm only really afraid of one thing, and that is I'm afraid of being afraid. So I talked earlier about looking at this really dark stuff, and somebody mentioned in the comments it's very desensitizing, and that is a danger, definitely a danger, but it's also one of the main reasons why I do it. I do it to desensitize myself. I don't want to be incapacitated in an emergency, people missing heads or limbs or something. I don't want to be the guy who can't act. I need to be desensitized. We saw, there's this, people of a certain age, my age, went to high school, and there were driver's ed classes in high school, and they would show you these movies called, we generically called them hamburger on the highway movies, but they were called mechanized death and things like that, and they were produced by the Florida Highway Patrol, and it was actual footage of actual accidents, guys decapitated, people just smeared into red paste on the inside the grill of another car, horrible stuff. And I was the only person in the room who had to excuse himself and get out because I was just lightheaded. I just made me sick, and I just knew that I could not afford to be that squeamish. I just couldn't afford to be. So I purposely started looking for stuff in order to desensitize myself, and I did that very consciously because in a real bad situation, somebody's got to be able to act, and it's not just one person. This comes back to social proof. If there's a burning apartment building and there are people inside screaming, there will be a crowd of 100 people outside on the street looking up at this burning building, and none of them will do anything. If one person has the moral courage to go in there, 10 people will follow him immediately. But somebody has to go first, and if somebody goes first, then that'll happen. Dave Big Boutte says, I thought you desensitized yourself when you did what we saw on communism. Yeah, that I've not been quite the same ever since that series, because the really horrible stuff I couldn't even put in the show. I put enough in the show to make it a punch in the guts, but there are some things I couldn't. I just simply couldn't put in there. on some level, you kind of miss. It's dark, and it can darken your mood, but it also brightens my mood, because I look around at the world I see, and I realize this isn't the battlefields of Ukraine, and this isn't sub-Saharan Africa, and people being hacked to pieces with machetes, or the slums of Rio, or it gives you a real positive perspective on what this country is, and how lucky we are to live here, and it makes me very grateful for that. So there you go. We got a Road Rider. Let me just see what we got here. We got a Guy Balo. We got two Steve Youngs. I'll do one of those. We got an Eric Blake, and we got a Capital G Geek, and then we have a Marisha Dark. So I still got a fair amount to do here. So I'm gonna have to speed this up a little bit. Okay, Road Rider. Keep up the good work as long as you can, Bill. I've learned so much from your works. Same for my wife and two of my three daughters. Thank you. My wife will have TSL up on Roku, even on the TV, even before I get home from work. Well, that's very flattering. I didn't know I was on Roku, to be honest with you. Gulf of America was dumb. However, Biden's ban was on offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. No, it couldn't be that simple, could it? I mentioned this earlier. Yes, it surely could be. So I was wrong about that. Greenland has rare earth minerals, as many have said, and a potential tactical move such as a block to China and Russia cozying up to Greenland. Is it really that simple? Great-great-grandkids will learn of the Greenland purchase. Yeah, I'm on board. And I was not against either of these things on principle. I just thought they were distractions prior to the inauguration. But I'm being proven wrong on these things. I'm much more on board with both the Gulf of America and Greenland. And I was 100% behind Greenland. Don't get me wrong. I want Greenland. I wanted Greenland. I did something back in last week in December called All I Want for Christmas is Greenland. And I wasn't kidding. I just thought that it wasn't a wise use of airtime, But hey, man, I think they're great. Never in my life have I seen an administration prepared to move on day 1, 2, 3 like this one. Me neither. As I said to the people today, if Donald Trump had done in the first 100 days what he's done in the first 100 hours, I would count myself very well satisfied. The question, have you ever seen an administration move so fast with so much effort? No, nobody's ever done what this man has done. And the reason that it's happening so quickly is because Donald Trump had 4 years to sit and think about this. He had 4 years of being attacked by this. Let's keep it nice in the comment section, okay? I don't mind, obviously, discussions. I love discussions and arguments, but we're all friends here. So if he hadn't had 4 years of being persecuted and prosecuted and hounded and lied about and so on, Donald Trump has been preparing for his first term for 4 years, and he's had plenty of time to think about exactly what he wants to do. So you could make a compelling case, really, that it would. I'm not saying we change the Constitution or anything. I think the Constitution is perfect as written, but you could make a compelling case that from a political point of view and an effectiveness point of view, the smart play would be for you to have a first term as president, not run, have your vice president run, and then have you come back and run again. Take some time off, and Matt Harris says, this is too good to pass up. Matt Harris in our YouTube chat says, Trump the white is far wiser than Trump the gray. So, yes, this is Trump the white. Exactly. Exactly right. So, anyway, that's good. No, I've never seen anybody move this fast, and I couldn't be happier, Road Rider. Guy Balo, Greetings, Bill. Did you by chance get to watch President Trump in the Oval Office signing executive orders for nearly an hour and just chatting with the media? I think I saw a little bit of it. It was nice to see the majority of the press being pleasant to him for a change. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. I like you think that governing through executive orders is not the way it's supposed to work, but when we have a House that's too busy fighting with each other instead of the Democrats and a gutless Senate that wants to be friends with the Democrats, that's the only way to get something accomplished. Well, I agree. And a lot of damage has been done by executive order. Let's do some good with executive order. And then once it's done with executive order, let's make it legislation so it can't be undone by executive order. This is what I mean by locking the door once we get inside. So that's, I think, basically it. I think President Trump knows that Congress is going to do the bare minimum to help accomplish his goals, so all that he has left is executive orders. Republicans in Congress talk about all the things they're going to do, and then the Democrats fight them, so they just give up. Thoughts? This was undoubtedly true during the first term. I think that the cultural momentum that Trump is swinging, this wrecking ball of momentum, has got even the Republicans' attention. The left is in full retreat across the board, and I completely agree that a large number of Republican senators and representatives are cowards at heart. But I think he's clearing so much ground so quickly that their timid little bodies and feet are kind of following along. You know what I mean? They're just Collins and Murkowski welched on Hegseth. So what's the story on Hegseth now? Anybody know the latest on Hegseth's confirmation? I'll tell you something, man. If he doesn't get through, I will be extraordinarily pissed off. I thought it was after the Armed Services Committee endorsed him. I thought he was pretty much gonna sail through it. I have $100 super chat. My gosh. P7 says, and not just a bulldozer, but his approval ratings are climbing. That's also important. Let's see. Sorry, I missed that. It's up there. I'm scrolling. Are you talking about the one from Tuesday's Avenger? Because I covered that one. We're talking about organic algorithms driven by people finding patterns. That's what led us to the talk about common sense. So unless there's something after that, I actually did cover that one. Is that the one that we're talking about? Oh, okay, good. It looks like JD's vote as vice president is going to break the tie. And when are we going to know? Weren't we supposed to know today? And they're holding up Bondi. And, she was phenomenal. I think Bondi's a done deal. I think that's why they're holding it up. So it looks like he's going to get through because Vance is going to have the tie-breaking vote. Perhaps. I will be very, very, very upset if he's not confirmed. And and the Democrats are doing everything they can to delay, which makes them look weak and powerless. 3 Republicans opposed him, huh? Yeah, Fetterman is impressing me. 3 Republicans opposed him. So when does anybody see this? Because I've been out of the news cycle for the last 24 hours. Yeah, Fetterman suddenly after he recovered from the stroke, he's been like really sensible guy. Um, so more than Trump. That's called neuroplasticity, isn't it? The fact that Fetterman's able to recover his, because he was when he was elected, he was out of it. McConnell, Murkowski, and one other. Okay, well, they get to go home. Um, all right, I guess nobody really has an answer. If somebody could tell me what the likely story on Hegseth is, because I really think we need Hegseth. I can't imagine. Uh, hmm. Government says I think all Democrats should have a stroke, and half of the Republicans. I couldn't agree more. Um, all right. Well, I guess if anybody can tell me what is likely to happen with Hegseth and when, I'd really appreciate it because I've just missed it. Um, oh, he's on the final vote at the moment. He's cleared the Senate. Wesley Bruce says, I think Greenland will end up independent, not part of the USA, but part of NATO. Scandinavia, Alaska, and Canada has a rail in the same terrain as Greenland does. Yeah, I think Greenland might end up as something like a territory or protectorate. I think we could make them a very large cash offer that they would find very attractive without having to give up being Greenlanders. I wouldn't want to become Greenlander if somebody offered to buy my country. Um, all right, so maybe somebody can keep me posted on that. Bastards. Final vote is tomorrow. That's what I was wanting to know. Okay. AKA Woody Fool says, word on the street is Collins and Murkowski said no because they knew it wouldn't matter. Um, yes, I was aware that Greenland has had a long-standing independence movement from Denmark. It's hard to believe that they're still property of Denmark. So, yeah, we'll see. Um, okay, we got two Steve Youngs here. Uh, One of them's about Trump and the 14th Amendment, and I don't know anything about that. I just don't have any information on that. So the second one, and I'm sorry to say, we've already covered largely that. Steve Young says, good Sir William. Hello, Steve. Thank you. Under Secretary of State Rubio, is there a chance your stepdaughter might get a visa to visit or immigrate to America? Yes, I'm hoping that that there are now strings that can be pulled, while there certainly wasn't in the previous administration. On the contrary, so Hegseth hearing is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Um, uh, the As we talked about earlier, Steve, I'm going to get a chance to find out in the not too distant future. I'm going to let another week or so go by, and then I'm going to make some phone calls. So we'll see. Matthew D. Rice says, I'm just stopping by to say hello. Well, hello, Matthew D. Rice, and welcome to the fan club, and we're glad to see you. And either stick around or come back, because we're always happy to see people come by and say hello. All right, moving on. We have Eric Blake, Capital G Geek, and Marusha Dark, and that'll do it for the night. We are at 2:39. Well, 2:18 of recording, so it'll be a little under a 3-hour tour. Um, okay, so for Eric Blake, tonight the case of the classified conundrum. So, Bill, earlier tonight, Trump officially signed the declassification of all remaining documents on the assassination cases of JFK, RFK, and MLK. So here's a fun little question. What does your gut tell you on those remaining files that were apparently too dangerous to declassify with the previous batch in Trump's first term? What do you expect we'll learn, and why? My pet theory is the remaining JFK files just may contain the name of the father of a current czar of the largest country on earth, or maybe Vladimir's KGB mentor. Seriously, I've long leaned towards Reagan's theory that the whole KGB laughed at Oswald and he returned to America with his tail between his legs was all staged so that their new asset could work freely without any close surveillance from our guys. After all, the aforementioned first batch did reveal Oswald had the phone number of the KGB's head of assassinations. I think that my personal feeling is that the declassification is that nothing is going to come of it. I don't expect any surprises. If it turns out that there are surprises, then I will be the first person to admit that I was wrong about that. And if it turns out that there is, in fact, a Kennedy conspiracy and there's evidence to prove it, and that the whole thing was covered up and that Lee Harvey Oswald was made a patsy, I will be surprised but intrigued. I don't believe we're going to see anything in there. I think it's going to be the equivalent of Geraldo Rivera opening up, the Al Capone's tomb. I just don't think there's any there. I think the evidence for the story as it was reported is very strong. And I have not seen any evidence to the contrary that either didn't contradict itself or wasn't necessary. So I would be surprised if there's anything that changes the classical explanation for all three of those assassinations. I don't believe the CIA or the FBI or the mob had anything to do with it, because I don't think you need it. And I think the evidence against Oswald is overwhelming, especially the psychological evidence, which nobody ever talks about. So I'm not going to get into that now. I'll just simply say that if it turns out that this reveals that there was in fact a big conspiracy, then I'm wrong, and I'm intrigued, and I'm looking forward to finding out who really did it. But I don't believe that's the case. I think the conventional explanation of all three assassinations are more than enough, supported by existing evidence, to be the Occam's razor choice of all of those. So time will tell. I am glad that he's declassifying it, because one way or another, it'll put an end to this. It'll either say, my God, Lyndon Johnson was hanging upside down from a helicopter and shot him from underneath the overpass, while Jimmy Hoffa was firing from the grassy knoll. That may prove to be the case, but I'm inclined to think that's not going to happen. I think there's probably some, there may be some sources or something like that, some kind of protection of sources and just Hot Topic, and or they may find out that Oswald's connection with the Soviets was more. I think this is probably the most shocking thing that I realistically expect will be that Lee Harvey Oswald had a deeper connection to the KGB than was previously believed. But to have it end up being somebody other than Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone, I think will be earth-shaking and interesting, but I don't think that's going to happen. So that's my answer to that question. Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Greetings from the smoking remains of Los Angeles. The winning is fantastic, and Trump's pick for border czar is amazing. If you haven't seen the clip from the criminal Haitian, I've mentioned at the top of the show, saying he won't go back to Haiti, and then Tom Homan saying, well, he's wrong, he's going back to Haiti. It's worth a watch. Yes, it's great. I mentioned that earlier. One thing I haven't seen addressed is that I really think needs to be is vulture capitalism. An example of this is an equity firm bought Red Lobster, then spun off the real estate side, making the restaurant renters. This directly led to their bankruptcy. What do you think could be done about that? The only thing I can come up with is to make shares held by funds non-voting. On a separate topic, I run lights for our local homeschool children's theater group, and they open Rogers and Hammerstein's Cinderella tomorrow night. Well, congratulations, and tell them to break a leg, tell them to break all of their cute little legs. And vulture capitalism, we've talked about this before, is a cancerous byproduct of the metabolism that drives capitalism. It is difficult to legislate against, both practically and on principle. I mean, the free market has its own wisdom, and nevertheless, this kind of capitalism, where a conglomerate will get together, buy out a company that is certainly not asking for subsidies, is doing okay. It's paying its employees, and people have places to go to eat, and it's, all of this. And then somebody comes in and buys them out and forces them out of business, and they cash out, and they make, $1 billion for themselves, and now, 10,000 people are out of work. This is the kind of capitalism that creates liberalism. There's no need for progressivism and liberalism if it weren't for the bad actors in a free market economy. Somebody said that about Reagan. That Reagan came to save us from, not from the left, but to save us from the excesses of the right. To show us what virtuous capitalism is. See, capitalism is a mechanism. It doesn't have an ethical basis. It's like money. Money doesn't care who owns it. Money is not morally good or morally evil. Money is simply there. It's like a gun. Guns don't have any moral value. What you use the gun for is where morality enters into the equation when it comes to things like guns. So, like guns, they can be used for good or for evil, and capitalism is a system of... it is the most just system of economics that has been devised by man, because it allows people to vote with their feet, with their money. You get to decide whether or not you want to work and mow 30 lawns to get the $200 Nikes, or mow 2 lawns to get the $300 Nikes, or mow 2 lawns to get the $30 Kmart specials. It's all about freedom and choice. It's non-coercive. But there are people that operate in the margins of the free market who do things that I think are immoral. And the problem with that is trying to legislate against the immoral can usually do more damage. For example, there's any number of over-the-counter medications that were very, very effective that have been taken off of over-the-counter because people used them to make meth or drugs or whatever else the case may be. And so the cure becomes worse than the disease. I'm inclined to not want to try to interfere or legislate with the market. I'm 100% in favor of shaming these people and calling attention to them, and making it cost them more to be bad guys than it would for them to be relatively good guys. Now, there are some businesses that simply go out of business because they have either run their course or they just badly run, or whatever the case may be. I personally loved Boston Market. I thought Boston Market was one of the most delicious places ever, and they've gone. They're just gone. And I miss them. I don't know why they went out of business. I thought they were just great. But that's the market. And if they were losing money, I certainly don't want to subsidize Boston Market. But boy, do I miss Boston Market. They were damn delicious. That chicken sandwich they had was great, and their meatloaf was great. I miss them. But they're gone. And it's a shame, but that's the reality of it. Yeah. Okay. Last question from Marusha Dark. Oh, here's a Trinity Waters super chat. Positive and Trumpy stream tonight. Keep being Bill. Thank you very much. It is positive and Trumpy. Rusha Dark, Singapore or India? I sent you a video about the economic miracle that is Singapore. I have some. I did not see it, but I haven't had time. But I am aware of what Singapore is and how astonishing Singapore is, largely because of the British. Same for Hong Kong. But this is the other one. It's rumored that Vivek was kicked off of Doge. No one's sure whether that's true or why, but for the sake of the argument, let's say he was taken off the project. I didn't know if that was a rumor or not. He's off, is he? Vivek's gone from Doge? That's a frickin' loss. Should Vivek be appointed ambassador to India? He clearly has strong cultural connections to the country. How did that happen? How did Vivek get off of Doge? The thing I heard was that he was too critical of American workers. We're not sure if he is or not. Someone said he's running for governor. Okay, both of those is okay. He wants to be governor of Ohio. Okay, that's good. But he is off. All right, well, if he's off for something better, that makes me happy because I think he's very, very valuable. The reason I heard that he was kicked off, Daddy Al Batty says, who cares about shame? What does shame do? Shame can modify people's behavior without actual physical coercion. Shame can change the environment and change the calculations of profit and loss that in a way that is non-coercive but rather more suggestive. Non-legislative change can be accomplished through shame, and shame is designed to modify behaviors. Shame is great. Now, if it turns out, if what these guys were doing with the Red Lobsters was legal, then you can't very well prosecute them. But the story as delivered makes me regret that happened, and I think the people that used to attend Red Lobster, shame only operates when people have a sense of it on a personal level. That's not true. You can shame people who have no shame, and right below that, Resort Dog said boycotts do work. You can Marisha says you can't really shame an OnlyFans girl. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can definitely shame an OnlyFans girl, and you could shame an OnlyFans girl out of OnlyFans, which we should be doing a lot more of. But you absolutely can do that. And Wesley Bruce with a theory about this is also a possibility the Secret Service tampered with the autopsy because they incorrectly believed their guns hit the president. Yeah, that was a book that I actually believed in called Best Evidence, which for a couple years I believed I had the answer to the Kennedy conspiracy, and then I read Case Closed by Gerald Posner, and that did it for me. I thought Case Closed was one of the most effectively written books I've ever read in my life. It really, really, really locked it down for me. So should Vivek be ambassador to India? Well, if he's running for governor, I think he'd probably be better as a governor. I think we should be I think India is without question, India is the most important geopolitical ally that we have. Potential geopolitical ally that we have. If you have India strongly on your side, you've got China boxed in by Japan, Korea, and India, and if you can get the Chinese worried about their back door, they can't spend nearly so much time trying to kick in their front door. And I don't know. Just a lot of comments still about Vivek. It seems to me that if he's running for governor of Ohio, isn't that 2 years from now, or is it a short term or something? Seems to me that Vivek could have done a year on Doge or a year and a half on Doge and enormously improved his stature and his electability. But I am sorry to hear that he's off. So there we go. OJ Van Malmsteen says, I would love to see make a rebuttal video to woke leftists who try and assert that Star Trek was always woke. That is very, very tempting. Because, well, first of all, we got behind me here, we've got Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise building a cannon, which is a firearm, which is a gun, and he's going to use it to murder a member of an alien species. That's just one little tableau. Of course it wasn't always woke. Woke didn't exist. It was... Star Trek was liberal when there was a reason to be liberal. Star Trek was about equality, but not about equity. Uhura was an equal member of the crew, but Uhura didn't have special privileges over the crew. Most to the point, the one thing that Uhura never ever was a victim. Never once was she a victim. Never once did she ask for any special treatment. Never once did she show any sense of resentment or victimhood. She was just plain the best person for the job. Uhura was on the bridge of the Enterprise because she was the best communications officer in the fleet. She wasn't the best black communications officer in the fleet. She was the best communications officer in the fleet. That's why Uhura wasn't, P7 says Uhura never gave an indication she was a diversity hire, because she wasn't. She was the best in the fleet. And yes, and she was kick-ass. I've forgotten how kick-ass she was. She was especially kick-ass in Mirror Mirror, the alternate universe episode, where she disarmed Sulu. No, not Sulu. The other girl. The only bridge crew member I just really can't stand is Sulu. And it's got nothing to do with his post Star Trek political stand. Just watching him, just watching Sulu on the original series. Just there's something about him. I have to admit, actually, that while I thought the idea of Captain Sulu taking over the adventures of the Enterprise, I thought that in the final frontier, the undiscovered country, I thought that Captain Sulu of the Excelsior was as good as Sulu was actually really, really good. That the only time I ever really cheered for Sulu was when Excelsior is rushing to the aid of Dave McBooty says George Takei was the worst actor on an ensemble show that also featured William Shatner. That's really clever. But as much as I disliked Sulu, just something creeped me out about the guy. But it was the eyeshadow. It was his the eyeshadow that he wore. But in the undiscovered country, when Excelsior is rushing to the aid of the Enterprise, and he says, "Are we in range yet?" And he says, "Faster it is." And the helmsman says, "So she'll fly apart. Full fly her apart then." That was an epic Star Trek moment. Absolutely epic Star Trek moment. I thought he was great in that. All right, so last question. From what just to wrap up, Marisha, he's talking about Vivek. What I can see is an American patriot, usually successful capitalist, a futurist, and skilled at rhetoric. If not him, can you think of anyone better for the role? Since Tulsi's already got a job in national security, as you mentioned before, a U.S.-Indian alliance should be one of the first things we prioritize for various reasons. Yes, ambassador to India is. I don't know. Ambassador implies a certain amount of constraints. I think he'd probably be better as a special representative, somebody outside of the State Department constraints. Special representative to India would be great. But it seems like if he's running for mayor of Ohio, then I don't know. I'm sorry to see him go. And I'm sorry that Doge is going just to Elon. Elon has taken way too much political heat now. He needs to back down a little bit and take some steps back. I think Elon's he's a little ego charged right now. I think he's the most important human in the world. I don't think there's any question about it. And I think he's getting a little bit too. You can see it in him. He's getting a little bit too giddy, and I like the idea that Doge was a at the very least a two-person operation. I'd like to see it be if it were like a triumvirate, if there were like three people on Doge, I think it'd be more effective. Rather than now it's going to be one guy, and I don't think Elon needs that kind of heat by himself. It was much better to disperse that recommendation power. I think JD ought to be on Doge, to be honest with you, JD Vance. I mean, the vice president has very little to do. I think that'd be a great job for JD Vance. I think I'd put JD Vance on that, and I'd put somebody like Josh Hawley on it. And he wouldn't have to give up his other positions. It'd just be an advisory council. Ron Paul, that'd be a great example. Rand Paul. You don't have to give up being a senator to be on Doge, Yeah, and AKA Woody Fool says Fetterman on Doge. I'd be willing to have that conversation, because ultimately I wouldn't want to give the vote to I wouldn't want to have a Democrat on there if it was something where they were voting on it. But since it's essentially advisory to the president, then I think that gives it more credibility. So Rand would be great. Just sensible people, Like I said, Holly, Senator Kennedy would be great for Doge. Robert Johnson said RuPaul. No, I said Rand Paul. There's a big difference between Rand Paul and RuPaul. RuPaul's got better hair. Anyway, like I said, yeah, Musk Kevin really got it. Musk is getting a little too close to the sun. He's flying a little bit too close to the sun, I think. Elon's role with Doge is like Zaphod Beeblebrox. The entire point is to distract from reality. We'll see. Anyway, we're done with Marusha Dark here, and I've got a right angle I got to post and get that online, and I'm getting hungry, so I'm going to get that up and get home and get to bed, be in here tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, and get going on a bunch of other things that need to get done. So, yeah. So I think that'll do it for the night. Where are we at? We're at 2:42. That's perfect. 3-hour tours are a little extravagant, but anything less than 2 hours feels like it's not enough. So I'm pretty happy with that. So so thanks for all the fish. Thanks everybody for checking in, and for all the great super chats and the comments, the kind words and the great points and all the rest of that stuff. And we're always grateful to see new people here. So if you're new here and you haven't said anything, just pop a hello in there. It doesn't have to be a super chat. I'm constantly glancing at the chats. I know I miss a bunch of stuff, but I catch what I can. And right now, as we always say, these possible I do need to enable YouTube memberships and Twitch monetization, both. Yeah, that's great. The YouTube memberships especially, I need to take care of that. But this show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who have for years now and years been keeping the lights going here, and to whom we are very, very grateful, pretty much all the time. So thank you for the members. Thank you for everybody who dropped in and be part of the extended family, the super strata crowd. And we will see you Monday night for the Stratosphere Studio. So let me just check out of YouTube here. And it turns out that last Monday I let the stream run a little long again because I'm just so reluctant to ruthlessly cut it off. But that's going to change now because I'm going to ruthlessly cut it off. So YouTube, thanks for joining us, and we will see you on Monday.